Do you want to increase your win rate just before team of the season? We got the Division 10 to Elite Division series. All the videos are finally uploaded. We show you how to get from Division 10 to the Elite Division basic gameplay. No speed boosting, no mechanic abusing, no Trivella at all, because we want you to get there just with basic gameplay to show you don't need to mechanic abuse. If you want to mechanic abuse, that's fine. We want to show you how to play properly first and then show you what the pros do. What pros do is they used basic gameplay and then they mechanic abuse to get the top 10%. Not the other way around. They don't mechanic abuse first and then learn the basics. We go over complete in-depth tutorials. And don't forget, with my entire series, if you join now during team of the season, remember, if you don't get better after 1 month, we will refund your money. That is the nil guys guarantee. That is how sure we are. We've been running this for 4 or 5 years. We go over in-depth tutorials. We also go over pro gameplay analysis where we analyze the full professional player's game. We've got tutorials for everything, undefendable through balls, player locks, precision passing, precision shooting, everything that you could think of that goes beyond my YouTube channel. We've got the full defensive series, which defending series alone, just by watching that, I can guarantee you'll improve. Patreon.com/NilGuys. Links down below in the description. If you don't get better after 1 month, just send a message on Discord or send a message through Patreon and I'll refund your money. That's the Nil Guys guarantee. Don't believe me? Try it out. What have we got to lose? Less than the price for a KFC meal nowadays. Okay, what's going on, boys? Nil Guys here. Welcome back to another video. Now, I've already gone through the best tactical out. Now, remember, team of the season, ultimate team of the season is coming up very, very soon. So if anyone is wondering, this is the layout that I'm honestly going to be probably using. There might be a few things that I tinker. You know, we talked about that patch that came out, and let's say, well, that's not ultra defensive formations. It's not really much of a thing. But let's say, for example, maybe from attacking 4-4-1-1, I'm being a bit more careful on the defensive approach, although I don't use aggressive. I'm basically going to stay with this layout. So if you're wanting to know the best try-hard tactics that I have, and of course it's going to be variations of the 4-2-1-3, you can go ahead and copy these. But I wanted to make a new one today with the combinations of the 4-2-4 and the 4-4-2. A lot of people have been asking me a question of how can I play the 4-4-2 and make it more defensive, but use it for the entire game, because I know there's formations like the 4-4-1-1 that are kind of like a hybrid between a 4-2-1-3 and the 4-4-2, but the centimeters just sit too high. So I want to show you that. I'm just going to delete these two for a second. So we're going to delete the defensive one. This is why I don't use codes, by the way. It's faster for me just to do it like just create a new tactic. Name it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it A as an example. And literally, you just copy it. Well, the thing is, if you're looking for a 4-4-2, a defensive variation, you have to be careful about the players that you use. You can use a 4-2-2. That's completely fine. Don't forget to put custom. People always ask me, it doesn't make a difference, but use custom and then manually tune it. What's very important here is when using something like a 4-4-2, you have the 4-4-2 second variation. This one has CDMs. I've explained the differences before, but the main thing is these CDMs, they sit deeper in contrast to center mid. Center mid sit higher. They're much better for attacking. So if you want, let's say you get the ball down the wing, you have to rotate the ball backwards. Center mid's being a bit more forward will be much more attacking. But B, it's actually sometimes easier for you to actually defend, and I'll explain to you why. It's easier for you to defend if you're aggressive. Because the center mid sit higher, it's actually easier to press your opponent, and with a combination of a high depth, it's actually much easier for the average person who knows how to defend to actually get the ball quicker and concede less. But for the most people, I would say for the majority of people, using center mids, they sit too high, and then once you lose the ball and your opponent goes into a where you go into like a defense, you know, like let's say your opponent has the ball for a prolonged period of time. Let's say you lose the ball, transition, your opponent has the ball for 5 seconds, and your team sits in that 4-4-2, and then your opponent starts rotating the ball. That's when these CDMs, they sit high. So when you're trying to defend outside your box, you will find that center mids, they sit too high, and your opponents can be sometimes in behind. It can be easy for your opponent to break your midfield line. That is why CDMs are better, because they sit deeper near the strikers as opposed to center mids. So you can use a 4-4-2 or the 4-2-2. It will of course matter if you have players that can play both the cam roles and of course the winger roles. Up to you because you want to convert, but just keep it simple here. We're going to go for a 4-4-2 holding. Now I wouldn't recommend defending in this formation, but if you really wanted to, you can go with something like this. On the 4-4-2s, you can actually go, I'll say about 45 is fine. You don't need to go overly defensive. Remember, this is basically the same as a 4-4-1-1, except for you haven't got that middle cam player. That's all it is. But with CDMs, you can be a bit more stable. You can think of it as a counter-attack formation. I still use counter for my systems. And you can literally just copy this as it is. You know, the ones to go with inside forward. And you put these guys on defend. And you got both your CDMs holding. And if you want, you could do what I do, which I like to put one of the players on a poacher. So I like to put career on a poacher. And I put one of them on an advanced forward. Like, so Appin is normally pay there. But that's something that you can do. So this would be, you could argue, a defensive variation of the 4-4-2. So this could be one that you would start the game with. Another quick tip when you're doing these kind of tactics, don't create again, just duplicate the same tactic and just change it on the fly like this. So you can name this to, for example, I'm just going to name this to balance. So like this, we're going to, just to keep these easier, we're going to call this to D as a defensive and then balance. So then for the balance one, you can then go for the 4-4-2 flat. And what I'd recommend is just copying the exact instructions. So whatever, or the exact role, should I say. So let's be honest, everyone's going to be using inside forward. And maybe the only change you can realistically make here is, let's say instead of fullback defend, you may consider fullback balance. But you can have a like for like. And you know, both of them are deep line playmaker, or you can put them both on holding, simply up to you. So the idea is you have a CDM variation, and then you have a center mid variation. And what you could actually do is you can go ahead and copy the exact defensive approach as well. So when you go inside the game, you'll have two exact formations. One has CDMs and one has center mids. So that way, if you're kind of like pub stumping, and let's say you're like a division, elite division or 1 or 2, and you want to beat a player that you feel like they're quite weak, and you can go ahead and use a press formation like a 4-4-2. But the way then people make the mistake is they go into a game and they think they can always use that 4-4-2. Unless you're Anders, unless you're watching this and you're a rank 1 player, rank 2 player, top tier elite player, you cannot use 4-4-2 the entire game. And then there's some people, they see a lot of pro players use this 4-4-2 shape and they think, oh, it must be because it's the best formation. But it's a high level formation. It's only good if you are good. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to concede. Your defense, you're left to your own devices. It's up to you to use a center mid and run back. It's up to you to L1 switch and switch to your defenders easy. If you don't switch to your defenders easily and quickly and fast, and you're responsive, if you don't do that, you're gonna get taken in the middle. And I'll say a good competent opponent could defeat you. And that's why I think the big misconception is people say, oh, sometimes I win like, you know, five games in a row, but then I suddenly go, I don't know, 7-5 or whatever. The whole idea why it's happened is because your elo here, it's low. You're versing lower tier players. You're much better than them. Even with a weaker formation of yours, you get away with it. But once you verse people on the same level as you, that's when it starts skewing. So what I'd recommend is, if you are going to do something like this, start with the 4-4-2 holding defend. Let's say you really wanted to use this system. I would still go with the defensive 4-2-1-3 if you're asking me. But if you want a defensive version of this 4-4-2, you could do something like this. Then I would go back to, for example, a 4-4-1-1 like this, because a 4-4-1-1 is kind of like an in-between a 4-4-2 and a 4-2-1-3. It's the perfect combination. You still got the center mids. You don't even need to put box to box. You can literally go ahead here, and you can literally just put these players here, leave them on holding like so. You can even go, if you want to, and be conservative and put, for example, this player on the playmaker. So do you see? So like you'll go from, so ignore the pressing one for a second. So you have this one as a 4-4-2 defensive. Then you have the 4-4-1-1. And then you would have the 4-4-2 flat. So do you see how you progressively go up in formation? So you got the 4-4-2 second variation, the one to start the game with, or you could use a 4-2-1-3. I would recommend using a 4-2-1-3. That would be my personal choice. And that would be maybe to start the game or close out the game. Then for the balance variation, you could use 2. So you could use both the 4-4-1-1 first, and then you could use the 4-4-2. And then for the attacking formation, you could use an aggressive 4-4-2, or you can do what I do, and I use the pressing tactic. So you see the 4-2-4? So the order is not really that important. Well, of course, the order, what I put it in, I'm doing it as I'm assuming you're going from defensive to attacking. But when you duplicate it, that's something you just got to bear in mind. When you duplicate tactics, you can't really change the order. Like you can see, look here, you can't really reorder it as you want to. So that's something just to bear in mind. So the 4-2-1-3, in my opinion, you still have 5 slots. So I'd recommend having some sort of a 4-2-1-3 in. But let's say you like to predominantly play the 4-4-2, then you can put something like the 4-4-1-1 in. And then you could also have a defensive 4-4-2, second variation. Then you could have a balanced 4-4-2 like this. And then you can have a press header. It doesn't have to be a 4-2-4. I personally like the 4-2-4 because these players are wingers. And the wingers, they position a bit more in that attacking stance, a bit more wider than left mids and right mids. They still come back and defend. People think, oh, left mids and right mids, they're much better because they come back and defend. Well, technically, yes, but left wings and right wings, they still come back. It's only if you put, for example, inside forward, and let's say you go with something like inside forward attacking, then they're going to stay forward. So when you lose the ball out of position, and you lose the ball, then they're not going to come back. So this player will come back because it's unbalanced. You'll be playing that 4-4-2, but this player would stay forward. So even if you're playing a 4-4, they're still going to come back. They won't come back as deep, but they'll still come back. But their attacking presence is what's more important. So that is why, look, if you really, really want to, when you're setting up the system, you got to take into account and know what you like. So if you are going to use a 5 system, I'd recommend a 4-2-1-3. I'd recommend here a 4-4-2 second variation, or you could use a 4-4-1-1. It's up to you. Here I'd recommend a 4-4-2. Then here I'd recommend like an attacking 4-4-2. Let's say here you might potentially consider using, for example, one of your center mids on, or both your center mids on box to box. So you can use 2 box to boxes. And the last one could be a 4-2-4, which is more like an ultra attacking formation. So for those of you that like the 2 striker formations, the 2 striker systems, and you despise using it, and I understand that you don't like using a 1 striker system, that's something you can do. But I would recommend still, unless you're comfortable defending, then sure, defend in that 4-4-2 second variation, and you can put in your defensive slot. But if you're not comfortable with defending, go ahead and use a 4-2-1-3, because the 4-2-1-3 is the best one. I do like, as I said, I do like my version of the 4-3-3. I've already talked about that before. You saw at the beginning of the video, because instead of a cam, you have a center mid. I understand not everyone has a card that can play cam, that can play striker, and then that can also play center mid. I'm very fortunate because I did this evolution over here of Appin, and as you can see, he can play cam, center mid, strike, and of course you can play CDM as well. So you have to bear in mind what players you do have. So if you don't have it, that's what I'd say universally, the 4-2-1-3. I think in every try-hard tactical layout, the 4-2-1-3 has to be in it, if you're asking me personally speaking, unless you're very, very good and you defend 4-4-2. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget, if you want to get better FC content on my Patreon, so patreon.com/NoGuides. If you don't get better after 1 month, we will refund your money. So no guys guarantee. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace.